We continue to follow the fallout from the new U.S. airstrikes on Iran-backed militant targets in Yemen yesterday. The assault, ordered by President Donald Trump, reportedly killed over 30 people and wounded at least 100 others. These are the latest images into us from Yemen. They are from the Houthi media office and are said to show the ongoing search for survivors in one strike zone. Missiles launched from the air and sea hit the capital and several other regions. Donald Trump says he launched the airstrikes in response to Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, a vital sea corridor leading to the Suez Canal and the shortest shipping route between Europe and Asia. This Greek-owned cargo ship is just one of dozens of vessels targeted by the militants over 17 months. The Houthis say the attacks are a show of support for Hamas in Gaza. Crystal Gamansing is leading our coverage on the ground in the Middle East, and she joins us now from Tel Aviv. Crystal, the Houthis are vowing revenge for these airstrikes. There is a lot of reaction as well from Iran and Russia. What are they saying?
Well, the strikes that we saw yesterday, ordered by U.S. President Donald Trump, could just be the start of things after he ordered those strikes. He also posted on social media notice to all Houthi, what he called Houthi terrorists, saying that your time is up. Those strikes hitting the capital, military sites in the capital, as well as a power plant. The Houthi rebels and the Ministry of Health run by that group says that the majority of the victims were women and children. Now, despite those strikes, the Houthis say they are not deterred. They will continue to do what they have been doing since October 7th and the Hamas-led attacks on Israel, and that is continue to act in solidarity with Gazans. They had issued a warning to Israel saying that they would resume strikes on the Red Sea, vessels in the Red Sea, if aid blockades were not lifted. Now, those blockades are still in place. Those strikes yesterday prompted a wide range of reactions in Iran. The top commander of the Revolutionary Guard says that the Houthis act on their own, but if threats against Iran are acted on, they will have no choice but to respond decisively. We're also getting reaction from Russia. After those strikes were ordered, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke with the foreign minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov. The Russians are saying that all of these hostilities against the Houthis must stop immediately. But it is in a situation where, based on what we're hearing out of the U.S., more attacks like these could happen. The U.S. saying they are just working to ensure that American vessels are able to safely travel international waters.
So while that continues to develop, let's now turn our attention to those latest efforts to restart the Israel-Hamas ceasefire process. There is a potential new step forward, and that's after a meeting that the Israeli Prime Minister convened last night. What's the latest on that?
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told his negotiating team to continue to try to push forward with what's being called the Witkoff framework. That framework suggests a continuation of the ceasefire in exchange for hostages and Palestinian prisoners. Here in Tel Aviv, for a week now, there's been this encampment. People have been here camping out, saying that they are here to show their solidarity, to pressure the government to come up with a deal that will result in all of the hostages coming home at once. We've had the opportunity to speak to some people who are camped out in front of the headquarters of the Defense Ministry, and they say it is critical for all Israelis to show their solidarity with the hostage families.
I really feel on a daily basis that it's so important to bring them all back home, and I pray for this every day. So I just had this time traveling from the north to Jerusalem. I thought the best is to spend it here.
I know lots of people that sit at home and they're like, yeah, we want the hostages back, but they don't go out and actively fight for it. By being here and doing this extreme, taking this extreme action, hopefully we get more coverage and people look at us more and notice.
There is a lot of attention on this area, and in a couple of hours there'll be a lot more people here. A demonstration this evening is expected.
Thanks for this, Crystal. That's the CBC's Crystal Gamansing in Tel Aviv. For more on this, we're now joined by Sajjan Gohel. He is an international security director at the Asia Pacific Foundation in London. Thank you for talking to us this morning.
Good to be with you, Marianne.
And as we heard just now from Crystal Gamansing's report, the Houthis have been waging attacks in the Red Sea for a while now. Let's talk about the timing. Why do you think the U.S. is launching these airstrikes now, which we know is the largest U.S. military operation since President Trump took office?
Well, keep in mind that President Trump's priority has been trade, and whether it's about these tariff disputes that are going on or commerce issues, import, export, one of the key dynamics that involves this region is the Red Sea, which prior to the Houthi onslaught targeting cargo vessels, the Red Sea comprised of about 15% of global seaborne trade, which has been very much impacted since the crisis in the Middle East began with the October 7th attacks. And the Houthis have been one of the key entities ramping up tension. So I think what is now transpiring is that Trump is hoping that by targeting the Houthi leadership, bases, and missile system, that this may force the Houthis to slow down its tempo of disrupting the shipping lanes. But keep in mind, the Houthis are a very resilient force. The Saudi Arabians fought a 10-year war with them and failed to disrupt them in any meaningful way. So it's unclear what the U.S. strategy and goal may end up creating.
What is clear is that the Houthis have said they're not backing down. We know there are reports that these U.S. strikes could potentially go on for weeks. So how concerned about this, or how concerned are you about this conflict potentially escalating?
Well, it could escalate quite substantially in ways that we could predict, in the sense that the Houthis may try to ramp up further missile strikes towards Israel. That we know we've done that before, or they've done that before, rather. They've been mostly disrupted. The Israel defense system has been mostly effective. The country that perhaps is most concerned about the escalation is Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia, despite having that 10-year war with the Houthis, entered into an uneasy truce with them. And the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, he has been wanting to develop Saudi Arabia as a major economic and tourist hub. As we know, they've been hosting events and also diplomatic initiatives too, such as the U.S. meeting with Russian and Ukrainian officials. So Saudi Arabia doesn't necessarily want this escalating, which could impact on them, their safety, their security as well.
Let's stick with the involvement of Russia here, because we know that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has called on the U.S. to stop these strikes against the Houthis, engage in dialogue here. How could this impact not only what's happening there in Yemen, but also potentially what's happening in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine?
It's a very interesting dynamic, because the Russians have been accused of actually supporting and assisting the Houthis, not just Russia, but also Iran, of course. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran are being to Yemen in providing tangible logistical and tactical support to them. And in the case of Russia itself, it is a major concern that this is one of the few entities that remains in the Middle East that actually gets Russian backing and support. Previously, it was the Assad regime in Syria, but as we saw at the end of 2024, the Assad regime collapsed. So Russia lost a massive strategic ally in the region, and their only sort of remaining small vessel of support is by supporting the Houthis, and that will perhaps bring tensions between Moscow and Washington if the U.S. airstrikes continue.
The U.S. has warned Iran of about backing the Houthis, warning Iran to stop backing them. We know that a top commander with Iran's Revolutionary Guard has said that the Houthis are independent. They take their own strategic and operational decisions. But what is the likelihood of a direct conflict between the U.S. and the Houthis at this point, or rather, sorry, between the U.S. and Iran at this point, given that dialogue between both sides?
So there's a lot of moving pieces in this, Marianne. The U.S. seems to have also implied that it is willing to negotiate with Iran directly, which would be quite unprecedented based on the climate and the circumstances. Iran hasn't got many cards to play because, as we were talking about, they've lost also one of their key allies with Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Hamas has been devastated by the aftermath of the October 7th attacks. Hezbollah, another key ally in Lebanon, has also lost its leadership. So Iran has invested very heavily, continuously, in supporting the Houthis. And keep in mind, the Houthis are predominantly made up of Shia Muslims, which Iran definitely wants to try and promote its own sort of agenda in the region. And Iran itself isn't going to back down. They have invested a huge amount of resources in supporting, supplying, and assisting the Houthis, including in their missile defense system and their drones, which have been devastating to the shipping lanes. So that in itself will cause further tensions in the relationship between Tehran and Washington. And unfortunately, I don't see this slowing down anytime soon.
Sajjan Gohel is an international security director at the Asia Pacific Foundation. Thank you so much for your time and your insight this morning.
My pleasure.